Number one, engage respectfully. Ancient wisdom, treat other people the way you like to be treated. Yeah, even when you disagree. Number two, seek common ground. Now look, I'm sure there are people in this room, because I encounter them everywhere, who believe compromise is a dirty word. It ain't. In a highly diverse, pluralistic society, the only way to sustain a democracy is if we are able to figure out how to make principle-based compromises. And if we cannot do that, what we will be rendered is an all-or-nothing environment where the ends justifies the means. So we must seek common ground. Oh, look, they're passing a hat for me. So seek common ground. And third, and lastly, disagree constructively. I didn't just fall off the turnip truck. I know that there are issues that can't be compromised. They don't have to be all issues. And when we do have disagreements, it's important to do it respectfully and constructively. And here's why. Paul and I may disagree on an issue today strongly.
What happened?
You seem pretty committed to that. We may disagree on an issue today strongly. But if either one of us sinks to ad hominem, you all know what that means, a personal insult. If I say, Paul, you SOB, you're so wrong on this, and Paul says, I may be an SOB, but you're a stupid SOB. So, reverse the record on the photograph player, screech, stop. What happens tomorrow when there's another issue that Paul and I might actually have fertile ground for figuring out how to work together on? I'm still pretty at him because of yesterday and vice versa. So disagree constructively. We have a website, it's called Project for Civic Health, spelled out, .org, projectforcivichealth.org, and you can attach your name in support of these three principles if you want. So, international relations, housing advocacy, and a much needed attempt to increase civility in the public square. Here's what I believe. Some people think I'm naive. I'm way too old to be naive. We don't have to hate each other just because we disagree. We do not. Did you say that, Rosemary? Did you say you're not getting that? Was that you? I don't want your cookies. All right, I've talked at you way too long. Any questions? Okay, thanks for having me try. You know the old expression about results of misspent youth? It was the ladder. It was 2 stories high. I fell. Now I can't stand up for an hour at a time. So, if you don't mind. Thank you. Are you going to moderate the questions? Is that why? Are you asking me to leave?
No, I'm just stick around because
Warm the car up, Paula.
I have a feeling we're going to have a lot of questions here eventually. So, Sarah, you have a question right away. Here we go.
So Denny, thanks for being here. So I'm very excited by some of the progressive action that is happening and what kind of good responses some of the progressive candidates are getting. And I'm wondering whether that means our state legislature can get more done with more people pushing on more progressive agendas, or is it just going to make for more squabbling?
We were just talking about that.
TBD. I don't really know. I think a realistic projection to kind of frame up the January legislative session, if I'm being real honest, is given that it is the 3rd year in a row with an extremely challenging budget situation, you're likely to see some real difficult conflict and tension. And how we come out on the other end of that, you know, my favorite adage is they who live by the crystal ball are condemned to glass. So You know, I'm not gonna make a prediction. I think it is gonna be a difficult, pray for Liz and all the other 146 other members, because it would be a very challenging budget year in and of itself. But the fact that it's the third year in a row is really, really gonna tax them, challenge them. Back of the room.
I don't know, this is, you're the right person to ask this question, but I've heard that we are kind of behind on approving green energy projects, and I believe we are a progressive state with great goals. Do you have any idea why we're getting bogged down?
It's easy to kill things, it's hard to build things. And by the way, you're absolutely right. We're not just behind, last year we were the worst in the nation. We were 50th.
Right.
We can't build green energy. We can't build small modular nuclear energy. We can't build any energy. And if you were to ask me long-term, what are some of the giant challenges confronting our state, I would tell you that the lines are going to cross. Energy consumption line is going to cross with energy production line. And what I genuinely believe is that we're going to have some kind of a rolling brownout in the next 3 to 5 years. We're just not adding production. And the truth is our state's growing. Now, I'm old. I just celebrated my 47th birthday. And I'm dyslexic. 1/100, 2. My home county, I'm from Vancouver, and my home county is Clark County. It's 5 times larger than it was the year I was born. And we're all using more electricity than we did in 1952. All of that?
Oh, yes.
I don't make it 47.
Sorry.
So, you're right. We're, for a state that has some of the most advanced climate commitment laws in the nation, we aren't holding up our other end of the bargain of bringing clean, renewable, green energy online.
Can you tell why?
Yeah, why is that, Jenny?
Because people organize and stop. The power of no. I remember having a conversation when I was a rookie legislator 50 years ago about passing bills. He said, it's really, really hard to pass bills. It's really, really easy to kill them. And in fact, he said it's about 10 times harder to pass a bill than it is to kill a bill. And actually, if you do the math on the number of introduced and those passed, that's about right. But, you know, any 2 people can organize and file a lawsuit, or, you know.
Yeah, not so much a question, but at the newly elected officials conference about 4 years ago, you were a keynote speaker. And one of the things as the newly elected assessor that really stuck with me was your speech and the idea that I'm in a very important position, but I'm not an important person. And,
There's a story there.
You gave the whole story, and I remember it almost word for word, and something that really made me realize the importance of an elected official. So I just want to say thank you.
It's Denny, right?
Yeah.
I first thought they introduced you as Denny. I was pretty excited. So you're obviously uber competent assessor. First of all, has stepped on the punchline, but secondly, has alluded to one of my most powerfully emotional moments while serving in Congress. When I got there in 2013, the Dean of the House, that's the title given to the most senior member, was a fellow from Michigan named John Dingell, for those who follow him, that name would be familiar. John, when he retired, which he did voluntarily, had served 59 years and a handful of months. Odd number because he was elected in a special election when his dad died at a fairly young age. John was in the chamber of the United States House of Representatives on December 8th, 1941, when President Roosevelt gave his "A Day That Shall Live in Infamy" speech. So you imagine the span of history and the institutional memory this guy had. So we had this tradition of all of us would go sit down next to John. He sat in the well of the house, and by the time I got there, he was elderly. He only lived a few more years, as a matter of fact. He retired, I want to say 18, maybe 16, and passed. And by the time I got there, he was using a cane and was pretty arthritic. But we had this tradition. We'd go sit down next to him and ask his advice. I mean, wouldn't you? Hello. And so I sat down next to him and I said, I came to ask for some advice, sir. First of all, don't call me sir. Your vote is the same as mine. Your vote is equal to mine. I said, yes, sir, but would really appreciate some advice. He goes, okay, I'll give you some advice. And he turned to me, and I just remember this so vividly, even if Danny did spoil it. And he said, here it is. You have an important job. A very important job. And you're not a very important person. And it's the best advice I've ever heard. It absolutely is. And it's, you know, it reinforces one of my other biases. My favorite president, pardon my cliche-ridden body, is President Washington. Why? Because he voluntarily gave up power not once but twice. Amazing. And I think it was President Roosevelt who said the most important ingredient of leadership is empathy. To be able to see the world through the eyes of the people that you're there to serve and understand and feel what they are, whatever walk of life they come from. And I've yet to meet a person who was highly empathetic who also wasn't pretty humble in some regards. Unfortunately, that isn't always the case in our politics, both political parties, frankly. And it's why my favorite political adage was that coined by the great Catholic scholar Lord Acton, who served in the House of Lords. He was a Protestant, but he was a Catholic scholar in the 19th century, a letter he penned to a friend, in which he said, and I know maybe all of you, but almost all of you have heard this, power tends to corrupt. Absolute power corrupts absolutely. The danger of serving in public office in these positions of power, and I'm kind of exempt because I don't have a position of power now. I once did, but I don't anymore. But the danger is that you are treated with such deference by so many people who want something from you that it warps your sense of self. That's why I believe humility is really important in elected officials. And it's a paradoxical virtue, right? You can never say, I haven't. Oh, no, you don't. Right? So I don't know. Danny got me going on that. Keep doing a good job as assessor, Danny. Thank you.
I'm going to ask folks to, let me give you the mic if you want to ask a question so people can hear. The other thing is I wanted to, if people have not signed in and would like to be on our mailing list, we have some papers back there to put your name and your email, and we'll send you notices about what the Fidel Democrats are doing.
Uh-oh. Not Aaron.
So Denny, your story about John Dingell prompts this question, which I wasn't thinking about before, but given your position, I'd be interested in your opinion. I've long been reticent to support term limits because I worked around the legislature and I know how much value there is to experience. But 59 years, and of course now we have beaucoup examples of people who, by any measure, have stayed way, way too long. And are occupying important positions. So I'm just wondering what you think about term limits in the business of government.
Good question, Aaron. Let me preface this by saying, advanced in age though he was, John Dingle was unbelievably productive to the very last minute he served. He truly was. I've never been much of a fan of term limits, although my opposition to them is, I have less ardor for my opposition to them than I once did, but I still am not a fan of them. And I think this is the hard part to convey, and sometimes the hard part to understand. So if you adopt term limits, ask yourself, where does the power go? And the truth of the matter is, it doesn't just get redistributed among members who increasingly have less longevity, therefore institutional insight. It goes to staff, they're not elected. It goes to lobbyists, they're sure as hell not elected. It goes to other people. Now, the game's a little bit rigged with all the money anymore, we get that. But the fact of the matter remains that if you don't like the job John Dingle was doing at year 58, you can unelect him. You can't unelect a lobbyist, you can't unelect a staff person. So, that's kind of a hard concept for people to appreciate when they're just feeling kind of anger at the fact that, you've been there too long and you should have quit because you can't do the job anymore. And I certainly understand that, but that's the origin of why I would be very, very cautious about term limits. Paul, with whom I agree on things.
I'm not too sure we'll have any disagreement. But I did want to ask you where you keep your copy of Democracy in America, because I'm pretty sure you've been reading it a lot.
I hope everybody has.
Yeah, that's not my question though. My question is, what do you think the big beautiful bill, so-called, is going to do to our state when people get thrown? I'm a family doctor. What's going to happen when people get tossed off of Medicaid beginning next year, and our rural hospitals start to go bust because they're going to?
Go ahead.
It's the elephant in the room to me. I moved to Anacortes 3 years ago, and my neighbors all tell me they have family doctor, but they can't get in to see them. So they go to urgent care and emergency room because they don't have a family doctor. They think they have one. And I think the country is on the verge of watching the healthcare system collapse and isn't really aware that it started to fall on them, but it's coming.
So,
What do you think?
I think you asked a really important and timely question, and I thank you, Dr. Burns. First of all, I'd say that there's going to be some real increase in pain and suffering. Secondly, I agree with you that when hundreds of thousands of people are eliminated from Medicaid, that there will be a significant spike in urgent care and emergency room visits. The inevitable result of that is that those of us who have insurance will pay more because that will get shifted to people who have insurance. Our rates are going to go up significantly because that cost has to be covered. I think if I've heard once, I've heard it 100 times from people I trust and respect, that there are so many rural hospitals on the brink. And look, I need to be very careful about how I say this, because I don't want that to happen. I really don't. But it seems to me, again, I don't want that to happen, but it seems to me in life sometimes it has to get real before people take actions. And, let a couple of three, don't let, but watch a couple of three rural hospitals go down, and all of a sudden, the chemistry of the debate in the legislature will change. Because it's one thing to talk about it prospectively or hypothetically, but when it gets real, then perhaps people will wake up to the damage that's being done by the course we're on by HR 1. I refuse to call it what you referenced. Mayor, thank you for your public service.
Do without the mic or? Thank you. I'm a little less confident than you are that people will wake up when they start to feel the pain, because I think we're feeling that right now in Spokane and all across the country with respect to the wildfires. But that's not my question. My question is, first of all, thank you for your leadership. You don't have to have a position of real power to be a leader, and I think that there's a lot of value in that. But on international relations and on housing and also on civility, I think those are really important issues, and I really appreciate that. On international relations, I am very ashamed of what the United States has done to Canada over the last 18 months. And I wonder if we can't here in Anacortes be leading the charge in fostering amity with our neighbors. And one way we might do that is restoration of the Sydney ferry run.
This guy's gonna serve as long as he wants.
This is supposed to be a question, so I guess my question is, wouldn't you agree?
So, you know, we're trying to dig ourselves out of the mess of what I would frankly characterize as years and years of neglect in the fair system.
Yeah.
And it's not gonna happen very quickly, because those puppies are pretty expensive, but they've started. And in fact, they changed some state policies so that they could do it a little more quicker than it otherwise would have occurred. Yeah. I do agree.
Question back here.
Hi there. You mentioned the word democracy, so I'm going to throw it out at you a little bit. Democracies don't, can you hear me? Democracies don't last because two things generally. One, it requires an educated public citizenry, and two, an engaged citizenry. And the longest democracy has probably been Greece, 400 years. We're celebrating our 250th right now, and we're seeing major changes in how our government is working, certainly at the federal level. We're moving towards authoritarian fascism. And so my question to you is, because all of us in this room, I'm sure, share the same concern and we care about the same thing, how do we bolster our democratic populace? How do we encourage voter participation and participation in civic affairs? Anything. And so my question has to do with just what is your antidote to what we're seeing right now? Thank you very much.
Thank you. Boy, there's a lot to unpack there. I've actually had the privilege this year still in, remember that thing about other duties as assigned? One of my other duties is to chair the state semi-quincentennial commission. So I've been involved in the celebration of our nation's 250th birthday all year, and will continue to be. It's such a privilege to do it. We decided to take the approach in this state, frankly, not to go back and pay several $100,000 for a booth on the wall. But instead, to really support celebrations at the community level. And I can't tell you how inspired I have been by the variety of ways that people have chosen to acknowledge our nation's 250th birthday. And I always ask people to stop and reflect a little bit on this. The 250th anniversary of the signing of the Declaration of Independence, which is inarguably one of the most revolutionary documents in human history. And some people say it contains the greatest sentence ever written. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, and that among them are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And an amazing sentence that followed about, and this was the truly revolutionary part, the people that constitute the power of government do so only with the consent of the governed. This, in one fell swoop, kicked the divine right of kings to the curb. And it was profoundly revolutionary. Now, the truth is, as everybody sitting in this room knows, we didn't live up to those ideals then. All men. Black people were 0.6. But here's what we did do. We drove an aspirational stake in the ground so deep that it cannot be pulled out by its roots. It was a matter of a very few years when black activists in this nation were beginning to quote the language of the Declaration of Independence and holding that mirror up to the decision makers. It took us forever to make progress, but progress we made, and progress we continue to make, as a matter of fact. Now, we're going through a pretty tough time, and I believe that democracy is facing a significant challenge and deep threat at the present time. I'm probably more optimistic than the mayor is about the other thing. But I think about, I always like to share the language, and I especially like sharing it in a room full of people who are about my age. Well, I'm only 47. But I think about mom and dad. Dad, born in 1916, rural South Dakota, the oldest of 7 children, forced to quit school in the 9th grade. Why? The Great Depression had arrived to save the family farm. And then enlisted and served in World War II in the African theater. I think about my mom, the 11th of 13 children on a hardscrabble farm in Texas, and all that she lived through. And I think about all the struggles we had with the civil rights movement. And I think about all the struggles we had with environmental laws. And we keep putting one foot in front of another, and have by and large made progress. In fact, if I may be partisan, and I know that there are people here who don't share my partisan identity, and God bless you for being out, and God bless you for caring. God bless you for having a partisan identity. But I'll tell you this, I think our political party in the last 120 years is the most successful political party in the history of the planet for making improvements and elevating the human condition. Whether it was the Social Security Act, or labor legislation, or civil rights legislation, or whatever. And I actually have way more faith in my fellow citizens. It's not like there isn't damage being done. I'm pretty aware of damage. I was one of the leaders on the first impeachment when I served in Congress. Not like this surprises me, frankly, but I really believe that when you look over the long term, our capacity to do the right thing and to remember the aspirational values that our founders set forth in that sacred document, which they inked by mutually pledging their lives, their fortunes, and their sacred honors. And let me tell you, it was their lives. If we had lost, every signer of that Declaration of Independence would have been hung or shot. We can do this. I think about all the sacrifices that all the people have made for our country. You know, when I served in Congress, I would often get called by friends who were saying, hey, I'm going to visit DC, I don't have a lot of time. What should I visit? What should I visit? And I know that they expected me to point to one of the 13 Smithsonians, or one of the monuments, or the Capitol building, the Supreme Court, the Jefferson building, the Library of Congress, or go out to Mount Vernon or Monticello or Montpelier. I know that they were expecting one of those. Those were never what I said was the top thing that they should visit. You know what I told them the number one thing they should visit? Arlington National Cemetery, where 400,000 Americans lay in their eternal rest. Every one of whom put on the uniform and service to country. Tens and tens of thousands of them who gave the full measure of devotion to our country. And I get emotional about this because my family has experienced that. I believe that we are up to this. And we will prevail.
I needed that.
Hello? Okay, so whenever I get civically involved or I come to a meeting like this, there's one question that I always get asked, and it's how can we get other young people like you? I remember when you were being introduced, I might remember, I might misremember, but I thought it was mentioned that you'd be talking about work that you do to get young people civically engaged. Is there work being done on that? And if so, what can us young people and other people in this room do to help?
May I ask your first name?
I'm Zephyrin.
Zephyrin?
Zephyrin.
Zephyrin?
Yes.
He's also a student representative from school. He just graduated.
I just want to say, you really ought to give it up for Zephyrin as the youngest person here. Thank you for the question, Zephyrin, and thank you for being involved. I think there are three basic legs to civic health. And the three legs include engagement. That can run the spectrum of, you show up, you register to vote, you get involved, you run for office, or you're involved in your community in a meaningful way. That's engagement. I think another leg is civic education, and we got a long way to go. Frightening factoid here. The citizenship test. When people first take the citizenship test, which by the way is delivered only in English, and the overwhelming number of people who take it for the first time, English is not their first language. 92 or 93% pass first time. The test was administered several years ago to a group of native-born Americans. 37%. So we got a ways to go when a majority of Americans can't identify the three branches of government. And I've got my own personal theories about why it is that we're there. So civic engagement, civic education, and civility, the three rules I mentioned. Engage respectfully, seek common ground, and disagree constructively. We focused on the latter. We have, at the Project for Civic Health, had some conversations about the civic education part, but we have not engaged much in the engagement portion, just because we all have limited bandwidth and we're focusing, especially in the legislature, where you want to really nurture a culture of respectful discourse. And we have to work at it, because it is an environment where important things are at stake and emotions get raw. So you really have to work at it. And that's where we've chosen to do that. And I will say this, Zephyrin. How old do you think I was 50 years ago when I was first elected to the State House of Representatives? I had just turned 24. And here's what I remember. I remember being paranoid that people would think I was too young. And so in my stupid, ridiculous, immature way, my wife Paula is standing back there laughing at me. I decided the way to combat this is, this would be the photo of me in my campaign brochures. A very stern, mature look. And I even went so far, I labeled it. I don't want you to think I'm, doing fake images or any of that stuff. I labeled this. I shamelessly borrowed my nephew and niece for a family photo with Paula to make it look like we were older and had children. But it said, with his favorite nephew and niece. I was really worried. And I was paranoid. One of the ways I won, it was a swing district, by the way. This was no gimme. I doorbelled 9,230,000 households each twice. And I'd go to the door, and then I'd step back, because they teach you to step back so that you're not in their face, that you're less threatening. And I would prepare to wince when they said, "How old are you?" How old are you? And on occasion, they would say that. And of course, I had nowhere to hide. So I said, well, I'm 24, I've got some really relevant experience, but I'm 24. And I just knew that they were gonna say, oh, really? I've got socks older than you. And you know what they said every time, Saffron? Every time? Every time? Good, it's about time we got somebody younger. So don't think you have to wait, Saffron. You don't have to be 35 or 45 to run. Just don't run for lieutenant governor, okay?
I'm wondering, I hear what you're saying about term limits, and I'm wondering also about the influence of money.
Oh, God.
And is there any way of ever?
Yes, ever.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, there is. Don't hold your breath. But if I may, it's one of the advantages. I'm John Dingle now. It was 50 years ago I first ran for public office. By the way, I've been out of public office more than I've been in it. But, so I ran in 1976 of a 23 turning 24-year-old kid, newly married to the absolutely amazing Paula Fursey. And we spent our entire life savings, $5,000, gave to the campaign, raised $7,000, spent a total of $12,000. My opponent, who was actually, she had made a great legislator. She was really, her name was Eddie McInich. She was a RN, her husband was a obstetrician who delivered every baby born in East Clark County for 9,000 years. Every door I knocked on, I wasn't afraid of the youth issue as much as, oh yeah, Dr. McInich delivered me. But she was great, and she was really good. The meanest thing she said about, in the campaign about me was, and the reporter was doing a profile on each of us, and I know that they poked her to say something negative. She said, well, I think he's a young man trying to buy himself a political career. There's actually some truth to that. I suppose today I'd say, so? But I'm bringing this up, sir, because I spent $12,000. Last year, a special election in the 26th legislative district for an appointed incumbent senator, $3 million. I'm pretty good at math. You chart inflation from 1976 to 2025. $12,000 does not reach $3 million. So it's ridiculous, it's everywhere. And there's another part of it that's especially bad, insidious, which is, it at least used to be that every dollar spent was raised by the candidates, and you could hold them accountable. But now we have all these independent expenditures and all this dark money. And the fact of the matter is, independent expenditures can say about your opponent or about you anything they want, and you can't do anything about it. So it's really breaking the accountability link. It's not just the amount of money, it's where it comes from. And of course, we are here because of a couple of horrendously bad US Supreme Court decisions. And changing this court is a long-term project. Electing really good people with integrity that work hard every 2 years, that's a short-term project. Linda has a question. Don't give the mic to Rosemary, she wouldn't give me.
Hi there.
They drove all the way up here, Rosemary, burned a lot of gas.
Quick question. You're involved in housing right now. What are your thoughts and feelings on what's going on in Spokane right now?
Well, it's a tragedy. Paula and I own a business in Spokane. Paula was born and raised in Spokane. Her entire family is in Spokane. And it's heartbreaking. We're now over 900 structures, mostly houses that have been.
So what about state budget help for these families?
The governor called me Thursday. The governor called me Thursday and said, I need you to lead up our efforts to develop recommendations on rehousing. We have our first meeting next week, and we will be looking at everything from A to Z. It's important that people that understand in the initial phase, which can last up to a year, is cleanup. And so there are all manners of ways that the state can get involved to help people with that. I personally think that we're having wildfires because we have climate change. And we all extract a lot of money from everybody's pocket for climate-related expenses, including resilience, and that there ought to be a way to connect Climate Commitment Act dollars to people who have lost their every worldly possession. Because we are in fact remedying the very thing that we say we're collecting the money for. But, you know, we have a lot of work to do to identify it. We have, as they would say in Indian country, we have a lot of learnings. We need to learn from Maui. We need to learn from California, where they've had other large-scale fire incidents that took the homes of hundreds of people. I'm confident we can do that. You guys like getting together.
Right. Yes, now I have something a little more mundane, I guess. All the questions everyone else says I liked a lot. But mine is talking more about going back to power and the fact we don't have enough, and yet they still want to build AI data centers in the state. And so how do you let them do that perhaps, but have enough power to run everything, including the state?
So I think you're going to see a lot of legislation in the January session that will deal with data centers. In fact, I had a wonderful did she leave? She left. She left. Oh.
You'll see her soon.
I can say whatever I want about what she said. Anyway, Liz told me that she's expecting quite a bit of activity in this space on data centers. A lot of, at a minimum would be what she characterized as curtailment, meaning you're not first in line. That if there isn't enough power, sorry, you fall off. There will be bills introduced, I'm sure, to just outright prohibit them. And then there will be everything in between. like you have to bring your own power, and water, and water. Yes, it is. Yeah, it is. Aaron, I'm just telling you what I think is going to be introduced. Geez, you haven't changed a bit. I thought you mellowed since you retired. Why would I expect that?
You're holding the mic.
Y'all about done? No. Thank you for that question. It's, by the way, it's a huge issue in the country. I don't know if you're following it, but lots and lots of states are considering outright bans or significant conditions.
My name's Vicky, I don't have a name tag on. Stand up, Shay says. I always do what Shay tells me to do.
Me too.
I've noticed, I don't know how long you've known Shay, but she's really a great person. So glad she got you here. I think she did. Are you responsible? Yes, thank you. Anyway, I am so happy to hear about your involvement with all this civic engagement and all that. But my message, this isn't a question, it's more of a message. If we want to get locally people engaged, you were asking that question, how to get young people engaged, we have an opportunity right now. We have folks that are running for office who need help. I'm going to be doorbelling, so are several of you in the room. Please join us, and when we're doorbelling, we're going to also be reminding people, please vote. And if you have young people in your house, please vote. That's all. So, no excuses. Everybody in this room can do something, right? And most of you are. Many of us are out demonstrating already, but we need to do something more than that. So hopefully that qualifies as part of your civic engagement efforts.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Vicki. I actually consider being involved in campaigns an act of patriotism.
Yeah, absolutely.
In terms of civic education, I think one of the accomplishments that you haven't talked about is TVW.
Yeah.
So tell us, I don't know, does anyone watch TVW here?
Two people.
It's a fabulous resource.
Yeah.
Tell us.
Really, seriously. Raise your hand if you've ever watched TVW. Thank you. Even to the liars who are raising their hand. TVW is our state's statewide public affairs television network patterned after C-SPAN. It's been on air since April 10th, 1995. I was there because I was the first CEO and co-founder. What happened was that we were coming to the end of, how many of you remember Governor Gardner? Oh, bless each and every one of you.
I remember Rosalie.
Did you? Paul and I attended Al's 100th birthday. So toward the end of Governor Gardner's term, I was chief of staff, and my dear friend Stan Marshburn, who was our director of policy, he came into my office one day. He bounded into my office because that's all he ever did, is a very enthusiastic guy. And he said, I know what you ought to do when you get out of here. We were months away from being unemployed. You ought to start a state C-SPAN. And I said, huh? And so we decided to do it together. And it took us a couple of years. And what TVW does is provide, as those of you who watch know, unedited coverage, gavel-to-gavel coverage of state legislative deliberations, committees, floor deliberations, all oral arguments before the Supreme Court, and all manner of other public policy events. Again, patterned after C-SPAN. And the truth is, there was A, a value proposition, and then B, kind of a selfish thing. The value proposition was, you ought to be able to watch your government at work. After all, it's your government. The selfish thing was that Stan and I then were in our mid-40s, and had been intermittently involved in state legislative stuff for over 20 years at that point. And we saw that a lot of what we had been able to impact could go out with the next tide, that there are very few things that are permanent. And we honestly just wanted to make a contribution. And the way we characterized this was, when in our dotage we could turn on TV and see that we had done something that lasted. Because we believed that once you began televising legislative deliberations, they'd never unplug themselves. We happened to be right, and here I am in my dotage, and there it is. But it was a torturous journey, and it was nowhere near as easy as you would think. My favorite TVW story is when I was going to the January of 1993 session to try to convince legislators to authorize the creation of this. And I remember one day, again vividly, going to this office and saying, here's my pitch. We want you to support authorization of a state version of C-SPAN. Oh, I love C-SPAN. I love C-SPAN. Well, good. This is just like C-SPAN. I love C-SPAN. Good. No, I heard you. We're going to do, meeting starts, camera goes on. Meeting stops, camera goes off. Unedited, just like C-SPAN. I love C-SPAN. Good. Then I can count on your support, right, sir? No. Why is that? Well, if you turn those cameras on, I mean, not me, but my colleagues, they will never stop talking. I go, well, remember, this is just like C-SPAN. I went to the very next office, same thing. I love C-SPAN. Well, unedited coverage, camera goes, the meeting starts, camera goes, blah, 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 blah. I love C-SPAN. Well, then I can count on your support, right? No. Well, why? If you put cameras on us, people will be so afraid that people will finally hear what we're saying and will hold them accountable for it. Nobody will ever talk. Channel 23 on most basic cable systems.
Okay,
It
what
is
if you're
now
streaming?
Pardon?
What if you're a streamer?
tvw.org. Everything available at tvw.org. It is I am proud to say, the premier public affairs network in the nation, right here in our very own Washington State.
Hi, I'm Stan. I'm from Anacortes, and first I want to acknowledge the person who asked the last question, Rita, who's also the person who produces all the cookies. So,
Please don't take it personally that I didn't want any cookies. I was just mad at Rosemary.
but I do have a question, but I also wanted to check on what Vic said that, and this is really back to engagement. I mean, we have to remind ourselves, somebody whispered this in my ear about 6 months ago as we were out on the street on Sunday afternoon doing our demonstration, and just remind us that we are the solution we've been waiting for. So, keep reminding ourselves of that because we are. My question, when you were talking about civic education, you kind of said you have your own theories about what's happened to it. Would you care to expound on that just a little bit, please?
Yeah, great question, Stan.
Thank
you. Well, I think the first wave, frankly, was our kind of obsession with testing to math and science. And the inevitable effect of that was measured is when we went through that wave of more math, more science, we're falling behind. And I'm not saying we shouldn't be doing a good job at it. A lot of other areas atrophied. Creative arts atrophied, career education, technical education atrophied, so did civic education in our schools. Very hard for a person of my age to relate to. My lifelong mentor was my high school history teacher. He was my lifelong mentor because he preceded me in the legislature by 6 years, where he served 30 years. And he was like a second father to me, and he was my high school history teacher. The second wave was social media platforms. Screen time comes at the expense of something. And that's not even, I'm not even gonna get into the corrosive effect on public discourse that social media has, but it's toxic. It does not help. People are, like we have a whole world of conflict entrepreneurs, people who have figured out how to monetize and make money off of conflict. And so the premium is placed on that. But you know, I'm not gonna give big tech a pass on this. I think it's really important to take a step back and kind of ask ourselves, what is the business model of big tech social media companies? And how do they make money? They make money in one of two ways: by attracting more eyeballs to their site and by holding them longer. And the more eyeballs and the longer they can hold them, the more money they can make off of either monetizing your information or advertising, because they're mostly giant advertising places. And how do they do that? And this is the part that is neuroscience. I'm not a neuroscientist, but this is inarguably true. If they jump up and down on either our fear or our anger button, which a lot of these social media places do, always stop, my friends, please, always stop. If you're reading a social media site and it's making you angry, just take a beat. And they do that because fear and anger release dopamine in our brains, and it is literally addictive. So they want to addict you, and they create algorithms that'll take you further and further down the rabbit hole of fear and anger to release dopamine so they can make money off of you. And this, I'm a bit far afield from civic education, but this whole thing, I'm sorry, again, I'm 47, I'm old. This idea that it would, Zephron, do not listen to this, son, please. This idea that it would even be arguable that iPhones or phones, cell phones, would be prohibited during classroom time is outrageous. It just is, said the guy married to the retired middle school principal. That's not arguable. You're here to learn. Put your cell phone in your pocket. And the insidious effects of undisciplined cell phone usage for some of these nefarious purposes by social media big tech companies is, there have been wonderful results from it. I mean, I spent some years in the private sector and enjoyed some considerable luck in the high-tech field. There are benefits to all of this, for sure, but it's like everything else. In fact, it's probably the most important thing I learned from Governor Gardner, which is so much of life is about finding the right balance. And we've lost our balance in that regard.
Hi, my name is Wynn Thompson. I'm retired military and a retired teacher. I want to stick on the education thing. I grew up mostly here in Anacortes, and when I was a kid, every kid had an opportunity to have a summer job. And one of the big things that a lot of kids would work on in the store, in the strawberry fields. And the owners would send old buses around and pick us kids up and sign up for his field. And it was something that you could count on somewhere, that someplace you as a kid could fit in and be a part of what was going on. And a few years later, after being away, and I kept thinking about these farmers This had to cost them money. We weren't paying for any of this. They had to be donating and doing this as a community service. And we need to find more industries that are willing to take these kids under their wing. I know insurance is a huge part of what's not happening, but somehow get these kids involved in what it's like to work in a group, solve problems together, and see a realistic end to their work. And it's not happening with the way schools have been taught. And most of my teaching was as a substitute, so I had a lot of flexibility in classrooms. And I've had teachers, or kids come up to me during the few years, and say, we really enjoyed being in your class because you made learning fun. And it should be fun.
Well, first and most importantly, Mr. Thompson, thank you for both your services, that in uniform and that in the war zone known as a classroom. Thank you for both. Will you please assure everybody that you and I have never met nor talked? No, there's a point to that. We've never met, right?
Never met.
So I want to make sure that we clarify that because he's not a plant. The most formative and important experience of my life was going to work in the fields at age 9 and picking strawberries, and then raspberries, and then beans, and then bucking hay when I was a little bigger. And I learned more about the relationship between hard work and reward because we got paid by the flat or the halleck than any place else. When I was 12 years old, and I apologize, I hope I haven't been too immodest this evening. I already talked about the importance of humility, but brag alert. When I was 12, I was the top picker in the field. And now comes the humbling alert. The next year, because I was such a hard worker, they put me on the truck. I was kind of a field supervisor. So you bring your flat up to me and I'd click your card and so on. And we got paid at the end of season. Guess what? I made way more money picking strawberries than I did picking so it was a formative experience for me. Now I'm going to qualify all this by saying I never wanted my kids to go to work in the field at age 9. I think that could have waited a little while. I really do. That was too young. But in our household, we're a blended family with 4 kids. Dad drove truck, mom was telephone operator. If you wanted some new school clothes for the fall, you had to go earn it. And that was an important life lesson too. But I think 9's too young. I think 10's too young. I probably think 11's too young too. But I think young people should have more work opportunities. This person's had their hand up several times.
Hi, I'm Susan. I worked in big tech at the pinnacle of AI and VR for a few years. And you mentioned cell phones and you mentioned social media, but and we mentioned data centers, but I don't think we've gotten to the crux of the biggest problem that's facing us in that realm. And that's when you mentioned cell phones, remember when cell phones came out, they were all marketed to people with kind of a reverse subscription model. Nobody could afford them. So what they did instead was they gave it to you, where you spent a very little bit of money, and they made the money back on the phone plan. Similar thing happens in social media. You might be the user, but you're not the customer. But what social media does to you is it yells at you. It is very much in your face. Or the same thing happens on Google when you're getting ads served at you. It's all yelling at you. It's very much in your face, and you see it happening. But what's happening with AI is different. When we get to the place that there is a reverse subscription model on generative AI, it is not just yelling at you, it is whispering in your ear. When I get a pair of glasses for free, and these glasses are worth like $10,000, and they hook up to a data center on the back end, and everything I look at, it already knows what I think about that, and it starts telling me what I need to think, and it starts like controlling not just the message, but the way that I think. And suddenly has control of what I'm buying, and has its hand in my pocket, because it's telling me how to spend my money. That's coming. It's in the labs. It's in the authoritarian countries right now where they're going to get it up to the populace. And when China has a free glasses for everybody, Americans are going to want that. And you know, it's like, oh, I got this thing for free, and wow, it does all this stuff for me, and it translates languages, and it, you know, it tells me all the background information and everything. I don't need to learn anything anymore because it just tells me what I need to know. We've got a really dangerous future out there. I'm wondering, you know, I've talked to our U.S. Congresspeople about this in all the neighboring districts. People are interested, but nobody seems to be doing anything about it.
Thank you, Susan. I can't help but think about that great old TV series where there would occasionally be the utterance, "Danger, Will Robinson, danger." I thank you for sharing your expertise. I don't have much expertise when it comes to AI. My bandwidth's a little bit filled up with some of the other stuff, but I want to fully embrace the idea that this is fraught with great peril if we are not thoughtful about how we guide and allow this to develop. Yours is a very important and timely warning. Thank you.
One real quick comment, I don't need a mic for this. The data centers, slowing them down, doesn't that in a way slow AI down too? If there isn't enough of the data processing ability for all the AI that they want?
Well, unfortunately, there will be localities and states that go ahead.
Yes, in regards to, is this on?
Yeah.
In regards to the young adults
Straight into it.
wanting to volunteer or get involved, my name's Pat Gardner. I volunteer in Mount Vernon at the Democrat office off of College Way. And then and when there's an election going on, I'm at the elections office by the courthouse as an observer. And I do that once or twice a week. And it's something that they need the observers. I don't see too many people there. Sometimes I'm the only one. And the young people to observe, to know how things are run is very informative. But back to the Democrat office off of College Way, they do phone calling, they arrange for doorbelling and different things depending on where you live and things out of that office. That's their headquarters. And that would be a great source for some young people. A couple go together and things, and that is Monday through Fridays.
Thank you, Pat.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sensing the mild restlessness that kind of sets in after 90 minutes, and also, look, I'm tired. And Paul and I are driving all the way back to Olympia. Did you say one more question? Glad to.
Thank you very much for coming in. Thank you, everyone, for the Democrats for putting this on. My name is Torn. I have one question, and that is about this concern about talking to each other when we...
I'm sorry, sir. People are having a hard time hearing you.
Okay, I'm gonna put my mouth on the mic here.
Eat the mic.
My oldest friend in the world, who I grew up here with in Skagit County, and I don't speak anymore because that person particularly feels that trans kids should not really exist in public. And I have really tried to both see where he's coming from, this person, and also see where I'm coming from. It just has not worked out. We've just completely drifted apart over this particular one issue. There are many people that I know, younger folks especially, who are cut off from their relatives because those particular people feel that this person who's my friend is somehow less human or less valuable than other people for various reasons, whether it's their sexuality, their sex. I mean, those are the big two, really. That's what it comes down to. How do we, as a society, cope with this kind of disconnection when people are willing to cut off their own relatives? I'm not talking about my friends who are protecting themselves, their mental health. By the way, best thing I ever did for my mental health was delete Facebook and also Twitter, or whatever Elon's calling it today. What can we do as a society to, what is the address? How do we get to understanding that we are all granted these inalienable rights, that we cannot be taken back? How can you get that across to someone who doesn't seem to get it without losing your cool? Do you have any of those?
What is your first name?
Tarn.
Tarn. First of all, Tarn, I'm sorry you've lost your best friend. I'm deeply sorry you've lost your best friend. Secondly, I get asked a version of this question many places I go. I don't think it should surprise you. And I had one young man yell at me because he was somebody whose identity had been denied. How do you expect me to be civil with somebody who denies my very identity? First of all, I get that. Secondly, you have not walked in those shoes, so I don't totally get that. But thirdly, what I usually share with people is that I take my direction from somebody that I think is one of the greatest human beings ever to walk this planet, and who did more for this country than almost all presidents, namely Dr. Martin Luther King, who famously said, "Hate does not drive out hate, only love drives out hate. Darkness does not drive out darkness, only light drives out darkness." It's a really hard thing to do when it's your identity that's being denied, but it is a tremendously moral approach, and in the long term, the painful long term, an effective approach. And I'm going to repeat, Tarn, what I said earlier. I mean, it's hard because there are people that hold points of view that I find so deeply reprehensible. But generally speaking, we don't have to hate each other just because we disagree. You have been an unbelievably patient and wonderful audience, and I've been so privileged to come up and visit you, and I'm so honored. Thank you very much.
Really appreciate you coming, thank you. And thank your wife as well for coming up. Ask folks to help put the chairs away if you have a few minutes. And